Imagine being pushed, mocked, and humiliated every single day, all because you were different. That's what happened to Ava Johnson, a quiet mountain girl everyone thought was weak. But what no one knew was that she carried a secret, one that would turn her bullies' laughter into fear. This is the story of how one girl's silence hid unimaginable strength, and how a small town learned the hard way that you should never underestimate the quiet ones. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts as the story unfolds, and subscribe so you never miss our next powerful story. Ava Johnson rose before dawn, as always. She lived with her mother on the edge of town in a weathered cabin that overlooked the valley. To outsiders, she was just the quiet girl who hauled water buckets and tended goats. She kept her head down, worked hard, and rarely spoke in school. But what no one knew, what Ava carried like a secret flame, was that her late grandfather had trained her in a discipline most here would never understand. In the shadow of the old barn, far from judging eyes, she practiced the forms he had drilled into her since childhood: sharp strikes, flowing movements, balance that made her body feel like an unshakable tree. Her mother thought of it as just exercise. But Ava knew different. Each move connected her to her grandfather's voice in her memory. Strength is not in anger, Ava. It's in control. The strongest branch bends, but does not break. That morning, after finishing chores, Ava walked into town with her mother to sell cheese, eggs, and honey at the small Saturday market. The square was alive with chatter, fiddles playing from a corner, and children darting between stalls. But Ava noticed the shift the moment they set up their stand. Heads turned, whispers spread. Some townsfolk greeted her mother politely but avoided Ava's eyes, as if she were invisible, or worse, a target. And then came the sound she dreaded, the loud, mocking laughter of three boys in leather jackets, swaggering through the crowd like they owned it. Chase Miller, the sheriff's son, led the pack, his smirk as sharp as a blade. At his side were Rory and Matt, his shadows, never far behind. They stopped right at Ava's family's stall, blocking customers from approaching. Chase tilted his head, pretending to admire the baskets of fresh eggs and cheese. "Well, well," he said loudly enough for half the square to hear. "The mountain girl's here. Thought you'd crawl back into your cabin by now." Rory picked up a wheel of cheese, tossed it in the air, and smirked. "You really think anyone wants to buy this junk?" Ava's fists clenched, but she stayed silent. Her mother's hand brushed hers, a silent reminder to stay calm. Then Chase leaned closer, his voice dripping with mockery. "Tell me, Ava, do you ever speak? Or are you just too good for the rest of us?" The laughter cut through the air. Shoppers turned away, pretending not to notice. And for a moment, Ava felt the old anger rise in her chest, begging to be released. But she swallowed it down, the way her grandfather had taught her. The bullies thought they had won. They didn't know the storm they had just invited. The market crowd tried to pretend nothing was happening, but Ava could feel every eye on her. Chase smirked wider, clearly enjoying the attention. "Careful with that cheese, Rory," he said, still tossing it in the air. "Wouldn't want the poor girl's whole week of work to go to waste." Before Ava could react, Rory let it slip from his hand on purpose. It hit the dirt with a dull thud, splitting open. Yellow crumbs scattered across the ground. "Oh no!" Rory laughed, bending down in fake sympathy. "Guess it wasn't worth much after all." Matt leaned against the table, making it wobble dangerously. "Better hurry, Ava. Don't want all your hard work trampled, do you?" Ava crouched down to pick up the broken cheese, her hand steady even though her chest burned with fury. Chase bent low, whispering just for her. "You think you're tough, don't you? Out there in your little cabin, playing karate with the ghosts of the past. But here, you're nothing. Just a mountain rat." Her mother's voice, calm but firm, cut through the tension. "Enough, boys. Move along." Chase straightened, flashing her a smile that was all teeth. "Don't worry, Mrs. Johnson. We're just having fun. Right, fellas?" Rory spat near Ava's boots. Matt gave a mocking bow. Then, with one last shove against the table that sent apples rolling across the dirt, they walked off, laughing louder than ever. Ava gathered the ruined cheese in silence. Every piece she touched felt like fire against her skin, each crumb a reminder of what she could have done, what she wanted to do. But her grandfather's words echoed again, "Control, not anger. The strongest branch bends, but does not break." Still, she knew this wouldn't be the end. It was only the beginning. The mountain roads were quiet that afternoon as Ava walked home from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The sky burned orange with sunset, and the pine trees cast long shadows across the dirt path. For once, she let herself breathe, thinking about finishing chores, about the stillness of the valley. But the peace didn't last. Footsteps crunched behind her. Slow, deliberate. She didn't have to turn to know. Chase, Rory, and Matt stepped out from behind the trees, spreading wide across the path. Their leather jackets caught the fading light, their smirks as familiar as they were infuriating. "Well, look who we found," Chase drawled, dragging a stick across the dirt. "The silent mountain rat, all alone." Rory cracked his knuckles. "Bet she still thinks she's better than us." Matt sneered. "Maybe it's time we teach her some manners." Ava stopped walking. She gripped her backpack strapped tightly, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Move." They laughed. Chase shoved her shoulder, hard enough to make her stumble. "Or what? You'll throw a goat at us." Matt circled behind her and kicked dirt at her shoes. Rory leaned close, his breath hot with cruelty. "Beg, Ava. Maybe then we'll let you go." Her chest rose and fell, steady. Every nerve screamed to unleash what she had hidden for so long. Her grandfather's voice whispered in her memory, "Know the difference between patience and surrender. When the line is crossed, you'll know." Then Chase made the mistake. He shoved her again, this time into the mud at the side of the path. Her clean shirt stained brown, her palms scraping against stones. The boys roared with laughter. That was the line. Ava's hand tightened into a fist around the dirt. She rose slowly, her eyes calm but blazing. Chase reached for her again, too slow. Ava's hand shot up, catching his wrist in midair. His smirk froze as she twisted, forcing him to his knees with a gasp. "What the—" Rory lunged, swinging wild. Ava stepped inside his strike, grabbed his jacket, and flipped him clean over her hip. He landed flat on his back, the air bursting from his lungs. Matt tried to grab her from behind, but Ava spun, her elbow slamming into his chest. He staggered back, choking, eyes wide with shock. In seconds, all three bullies were in the dirt, mud on their clothes, disbelief on their faces. Ava stood tall, balanced, her stance unshakable. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the trees like a blade. "Don't mistake silence for weakness. Next time, I won't be this gentle." She straightened her backpack, turned, and walked away, her step steady, her head high. The sound of their groans faded behind her. And for the first time, Ava felt the storm inside her finally break free. The cabin was quiet that evening. Ava sat at the scarred wooden table, pushing food around her plate. Her mother, Miriam Johnson, watched her closely. "You're not eating," Miriam said softly. Ava hesitated, then spoke. "They jumped me on the road. Chase, Rory, Matt. I stopped them." Her mother's spoon froze in midair. "Stopped them? How?" Ava didn't answer with words. She mimicked the twist of a wrist, the sweep of a hip. Miriam's eyes widened, but she said nothing for a long moment. Finally, she exhaled. "Your grandfather taught you for protection, Ava. But protection comes at a cost." That night, Ava stood on the porch, staring out at the valley. The land was more than soil. It was her family's lifeline, their history. But now she felt the weight of unseen eyes, of something bigger brewing. And she wasn't wrong. Across town, inside a grand stone house that looked down on Willow Creek, Sheriff Miller poured himself a glass of whiskey. His son, Chase, sat sulking on a leather couch, a bruise blooming on his cheek. "She humiliated us, Dad," Chase spat. "In front of Rory and Matt. In the mud. She knows some kind of fighting stuff. Like a freak." The sheriff swirled his drink slowly. "You're telling me a girl put my son in the dirt?" Chase's jaw clenched. "Not just me. All three of us." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Then Sheriff Miller chuckled, low and dangerous. "Her family's been a thorn in this town for years. Refused to sell their land when I offered. And now her daughter embarrasses my boy." He set the glass down hard. "This isn't just about schoolyard scraps anymore. It's about respect." Chase looked up, his smirk slowly returning. "So, what do we do?" The sheriff leaned in, eyes cold. "We show them what happens when people think they're above the law. That farm of theirs, it won't stand without water, without livestock. And Ava," he paused, savoring the words, "she'll learn what real power looks like." Chase grinned. "Leave it to me." Back at the cabin, Ava sat awake in bed, unable to sleep. The night air carried the sound of crickets, but beneath it she felt a tension, like storm clouds gathering. Her instincts screamed that the fight on the road had only opened a door, one she couldn't close again. And beyond that door waited enemies much bigger than 3 school bullies. 2 nights later, Ava awoke to the faint crunch of boots outside the cabin. She froze, her senses sharp. Through the window, she saw shadows moving toward the barn, shadows carrying gas cans. Her stomach dropped. She slipped from bed, barefoot, every movement silent. On the porch, the moonlight revealed them, Chase, Rory, Matt, and 2 older men she didn't recognize. The sheriff's men. They moved with purpose, sloshing gasoline across the barn's wooden walls. The barn wasn't just a building. It was their feed storage, their equipment shed, and the place where her grandfather had trained her. Without it, their livelihood would collapse. "Stop!" Ava's voice rang across the yard, steady and sharp. The intruders spun. Chase smirked, holding a box of matches. "Look who finally found her voice." One of the older men sneered. "Go back inside, girl. This doesn't concern you." Ava stepped off the porch, planting her feet firmly in the grass. "It does. This is my home." The men laughed. Then they charged. The first came swinging a crowbar. Ava ducked, driving her shoulder into his ribs. The crowbar hit the dirt as he collapsed, gasping for air. Chase lunged next, the matchbox in his hand. Ava twisted his arm, sending matches scattering across the ground, then swept his legs out from under him. He landed hard, choking on his pride. Rory grabbed her from behind, but she shifted low, gripping his wrist and flipping him over her back. His scream cut through the night as he hit the earth. Matt froze, wide-eyed, before charging anyway. Ava sidestepped, caught his arm, and planted him face-first into the mud. The last man, a brute with brass knuckles, swung wildly. Ava blocked, redirected, then struck, a palm to his throat, a knee to his gut, and a final kick that sent him sprawling. The yard fell silent except for groans. Gas cans lay scattered, their plan undone. Ava stood tall, breathing steady, moonlight shining on her calm but unshakable face. Her voice cut through the night. You thought money and fear made you strong. You were wrong. This land, this family, will never break. The men dragged themselves up, limping into the dark. Chase spat mud, glaring at her with hollow defiance. But his swagger was gone. When the sheriff arrived hours later, summoned by townsfolk who'd heard the commotion, he found his son and his hired men battered and humiliated. And for once, with half the town watching, even he couldn't twist the story. By morning, word spread. People whispered not about a quiet mountain girl, but about Ava Johnson, the fighter who had stood her ground. At school, students who once looked past her now stepped aside with respect. Some even offered quiet nods. Ava didn't seek their approval. She walked steady, her chin high, because she knew who she was now. On the porch that evening, her mother joined her. The valley stretched out before them, golden in the setting sun. "You fought for more than yourself," Miriam said softly. "You fought for all of us." Ava nodded. Her grandfather's words echoed again in her mind. The strongest branch bends, but never breaks. She had bent, but she had not broken. And everyone in Willow Creek knew it. And that's the story of how Ava Johnson, the quiet mountain girl, showed her town the meaning of true strength. If this story gripped you, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story. Your support helps us bring more tales like this to life.